versus OmegaZero. Let's do this!
We've got another elimination match, and OmegaZero, not for the first time, has questioned his opponent's lineup. Fortunately for him, the first time he did that, it didn't work out so well. Is the same thing going to happen again?
And not for the first time. I'm going to say, OmegaZero, if you're questioning everyone else's lineup, I question your lineup, OmegaZero. Stop paying so much attention to everyone else's. Sort your own lineup out.
Don't be nosy on other people's lineups in a tournament where you need information to be able to do well. Speaking of lineups, here are the decks they're playing. The main thing that sticks out to me, again, we just got off a cast from Omega not too long ago, is the no Rogue. Like, Rogue seems like just a natural fit. The class is extremely strong, but we can get back to that a little bit later on. Maybe when Neirea gets to play Rogue. Because for now, we are going to go on for some Priest versus Priest action. It's going to be Highlander on Highlander. There is a few different choices here. For example, the one that sticks out to me, OmegaZero playing Cold Light Oracle.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely, since we very first time we saw him, he's definitely had interesting twists, even on decks we're used to seeing. I remember, way back, one of the very first events that we did this year, I believe, may have even been in the previous season, he was playing an Argent Commander in, I think, Tempo Warrior. And I referenced that at some point, and Admirable thought I just made it up. He thought I just picked a random card to make fun of deck building, but no, he was actually just playing Argent Commander in the Tempo deck. So he does have this tendency of, he doesn't really innovate too far out of the norm with actual deck lists. You won't see him bringing something insanely off the wall that we have to think what we're even going to call the deck. But he will put these little strange twists on top of the existing archetype.
Yeah, I've seen it before and we'll continue to see it again, I imagine, going into 2018 season. Neirea trading the 2 loot orders off there and gaining the Glimmer route on curve. That's actually pretty strong because all these little minions, you don't really want to be dealing with as the Priest, because any form of poke damage can start to gets more valuable when you add it into the late game, as the bursts just get easier and easier to do once Anduin is played. And we can see that Neirea has Anduin, has Velen, is still looking around.
Master Spell purely to draw a card in that position. It's a very cycle-heavy matchup, and OmegaZero is just going to respond in kind. Neirea did have the option to go fishing there with Power Word Shield, try and find something else to do this turn, instead of just what seemed like a relatively ineffective Master Spell. But, Power Word Shield actually has utility later in the game as a re-proc for your hero power once you hit Anduin mode to protect more important minions to stick to the board and so on. So I like the decision to just, fully mana utilize your turn 4 and just jam the Master Spell, move on with your life.
Yeah, the Raj is a huge hit there from OmegaZero, just getting it live early. Still has a few turns to get into that Anduin, and to be honest, even if your opponent plays his Anduin without him having Raza as well, it's much less impactful in this matchup. You're not playing Tempo Rogue where you can potentially give them a board of 5 attack minions to then wipe out with Anduin. Right. So in terms of OmegaZero's deck building as well, we talked a lot about Lyra versus Gadget Fan, and one we didn't include was Cabal Shadow Priest. Yeah, seems to be vying for that spot for OmegaZero. So again, just like you said, nothing too crazy, right? But just one additional card, and there's the other one, the Oracle. Although OmegaZero is struggling to hold on to all these cards as it is. It's got the extra hand space for a few more.
Well, I will add, going back to the opening, that OmegaZero was criticizing Neirea's lineup, or maybe not criticizing, but saying there was nothing special about it. Neirea definitely agrees with that. He tweeted himself that he was disappointed in his own lineup, that he couldn't find anything next level when he had to kind of default back to the same decks that he'd been playing for 2 weeks. So, it's probably a fair criticism in the long run from OmegaZero. You can see he's willing to, at least take 1 or 2 things outside the box himself. Not bringing Rogue is a big deal. Bringing Murloc Paladin, not particularly common. And then all these unique twists in terms of tech cards and things that he is bringing in his lineup. He is at least experimenting outside of the norm that we've seen from most players.
Yeah, the running theme throughout the World Championships is few players with a lot of flair in their deck building, and we'll see who it works out the best for at the end of this 4-day event. It's going to be Cabal Shadow Priest, just played as a 4/5, and it's not going to be super impactful in the matchup anyway. It's not often at this point in the game Neirea will leave a Thalnos on the board, will leave an Acolyte just chilling with no card draw. Right. Having a 4/5 to just beat Neirea up a little bit. Definitely not the worst thing for OmegaZero. The old horror of the 4-5.
Just getting cards out of his hand.
Yeah.
He understands that he needs to make room in his hand to be able to draw more cards later on, and there's the fear that he knows Cold Light Oracle is in his opponent's deck, so he needs to mitigate the amount of burn that OmegaZero can pull out with Cold Light Oracle. Still needs to pick up his Raza. As long as that is in his deck, he is in jeopardy of just essentially losing the game on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, if you burn 1 to 2 cards, depending on the midpoint of the game, the odds are relatively low it's going to be Raza. But relatively low doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And if it happens, you probably just lose at that point.
Here's the trap that you can fall into, though, when you start burning cards from your opponent's deck. If there is one particular card in their deck that you are trying to burn, say, or one particular card in their deck that is so important to the matchup that they have to draw it, right? Your mentality is, oh, if I burn that card, I win. Well, how about the other 19 out of 20 times where all you've done is got rid of other cards that don't matter and got them closer to drawing that one card they need that wins the match?
Yeah.
So you got to think about this a little bit deeper, because sometimes burning cards is actually, on average, better for your opponent than it is for you.
Yeah, very relevant to the deck size and how many cards you can burn, which is why often Clerics Circle becomes very dangerous.
Yeah.
Then you can burn 5 cards and then you're like, yeah, that's actually just worth it. OmegaZero does have the Raza down. Well, it's a Raza effect. Nothing else to really cash in on it now. Let's take the manners with the steal onto the Cleric just to get a couple more draws out for Neirea here. You can even use the heal if you really wanted to then. There we go, yeah, he's going to go for the binding heal, just like you said, he needs to get there, and he needs to get there quickly.
And this kind of card draw is fine for Neirea. You can see that he is comfortable with this level of cards in hand. He will happily spend 1 card and replace it, literally cycle through his deck and keep the hand size as it is. He just does not want to have more cards than this in hand, as evidenced by throwing away that Shadow Word Horror earlier.
I'm probably being pretty okay with trading the Cleric in after that turn, right? You know, just to finish it off, it's like, I'll remove Cleric from the board. Right. You don't want to get anything too crazy going on.
Well, he'd be giving it back to, it was Potion of Madness, so he'd be giving it back
of course,
to
sorry, yeah. Of course. I was distracted by the shot that came in from OmegaZero. At first, because it was from the window, I was like, is the shot just to fly one of the rivers? That was like, yeah, it's a river. But it was, of course, out the window of the tavern here in Amsterdam. Here comes the Cold Light Oracle as well, so we're going to see even more heavy cycle here from OmegaZero. Is it going to help Neirea get there, though? Still no Raza.
OmegaZero just dumping cards out of his own hand, so he's not suspect to burn, but Neirea will burn 1 card, 8% chance to lose his Raza here.
Hand is
Breath.
too full.
Yeah. I will say, playing the Radiant Elemental out onto the board often doesn't feel great in this matchup.
I agree. I was about to question.
Yeah, Radiant is the card that allows you to do a truly stupid amount of damage, right?
Stupid is the word, yes.
Yeah, well, look, it's the best one I had for that situation. But yeah, you do absurd amount of damage then, because of all the 1-mana spells you run become 0, so then you just chain so many hero powers along with that Felon turn. But with it potentially gone, the odds are that it is going to be dealt with before OmegaZero gets there. He doesn't even have Anduin up yet. This means that the potential reach is greatly reduced here.
Right. I think crucially for OmegaZero, like I'm sure he doesn't love that he played Radiant Elemental on the board that turn, but he was recognizing that he had to keep cycling. And his only cycle card left was Cold Light Oracle. If he was going to play Cold Light Oracle, he needed to put other cards out onto the board.
I was going to say, that was a cheeky play.
Yes.
Because then he actually played his own Elemental, screamed them back into OmegaZero's deck, which means there is 2 copies of a card in OmegaZero's deck, so then the Kazakas wouldn't go off, as it requires only 1 of. Then OmegaZero's like, just draw the Elemental, done,
yeah.
Never mind. But it was a cute play from
was.
Neirea. But imagine the havoc that can happen with building Elemental without going down. You're just dead.
I mean, it's scary. You have to question whether long-term, like, is that really worth it for Neirea to take that gambit when you give your opponent essentially 2 Radiant Elementals?
Well, even if not just anything crazy in 1 turn, it means you can use 1 freely again. And be like, well, there's still the other one, so I can still do the stupid damage.
cards remaining for Neirea. Still no Raza. Does pick up his Kazakus though.
Which can help him draw more cards towards the Raza, but he does need to hit the point where he dumps some cards pretty quickly.
Well, he's also now in the position where he has a board state that he's answering. This is not something that is easily ignored.
Little damage to all. Not bad. Do you like the 5/5 there?
I'm not sure if a 5/5 ever really does a great deal because your opponent hasn't really used any of the key removals that would deal with the 5/5. So yeah, I was about to say I would expect that he took armor here instead. It just seems slightly more valuable.
Holy Smite off the Priest of the Feast. Not so much because he's scared of OmegaZero healing a lot now, but mainly because the Priest of the Feast can be healed, which then makes it even harder to deal with later on, and then it's a problem.
At last, the worthy disciple.
4 again is an option. Probably not going to take it though. Gain 7 feels okay. Deal 5, definitely not too bad.
Hard draw. Let's get the damage though, as you mentioned.
Blessed be this funnel king.
Neirea's just thinking, hang on, I just killed that.
The light has betrayed me.
I do like this Anduin play though now. Often, if you're waiting on Raza, playing Anduin never really feels that bad, especially in this matchup. Just get it live. You don't want to spend 8 mana later on when you don't have the wiggle room to spend that much of your turn. Just get it down. There's only 3 power on the board. Now you can even make, what, 2 hero powers a turn roughly? On average, it's like, should be okay. For now at least.
Yeah, you can start to at least achieve something while you're waiting around.
As
for
opposed to
Raza.
throw away a random card pass.
Right.
Never
This is,
feels good.
I mean, this is a pretty unfortunate draw for Neirea, honestly, because he... Ooh, a little bit of nervous energy going on for, I believe, OmegaZero in this case. I got it right this time. Hey, I'm learning.
We're learning. So you checked out his trainers, but not his top.
There you go.
Oh, it would have been funny if it was my fault. I'm like, wow, how did camera get behind this desk? It's a really good shot.
I can understand why sitting next to me would make you nervous. But as I was about to say, this is a pretty unfortunate draw for Neirea. Not because just one of his combo pieces in the bottom 10. That actually happens surprisingly often. Like it's disingenuous to call that unlucky. Like, oh, my Anduin was in my bottom 8. Like, yeah, that happens quite a lot. When you bear in mind that can happen to like 3 or 4 different cards depending on what the matchup is. But also he's got so much card draw stuck in the bottom of his deck. He's got Blood Mage in there, Norse Cleric, Novice Engineer, Acolyte of Pain, all in there alongside the Raza. So that if any of those cards were further up in the deck, suddenly they cycle 1 card further, and then card draw compounds. 1 card draw card begets another because there's so many left in the deck.
Darkness
It's like we're
speaks to me.
Loot Hoarder, right? Like it is the shuffle. Maybe a bit of the cleric work with the potion, but yeah, this is pretty unfortunate. Shadow Visions, I don't even know what options can it really open up for Neirea. Probably not a lot at this point. Are there even any spells left? Silence and Circle of Healing. Great 0 mana spells.
There's 0 mana, yeah.
Still kind of need Raza though.
Right.
Also kind of crazy that both players are on exactly the same cards. Well, and card draw throughout the deck. Both on 8. 7 now, of course, with the initial draw, but keeping it very, very even. And I think the only reason this game's continuing is because OmegaZero has Raza and not Anduin, and Neirea has Anduin and not Raza.
Right, absolutely. There you go. That is a Psychic Scream purely for disruption. Just dumping a bunch of garbage onto Neirea so that he doesn't draw that card draw that he's missing and so that he does not draw that Raza that's the all-important asset. But finally, Neirea does hit a card draw card. And as I said, this can snowball very quickly because there are so many of them remaining in his deck.
What's quite funny is
Boom.
I was just going to say, he can circle and then just hero power it again if he really wants.
Yep.
It's like, I will keep drawing this Acolyte. Oh, there we go. There's the Raza. Neirea just going to pause now. I think there was just a quick pause to say, do I want to play anything? Wait, I have Raza. No, I don't want to play anything. That's going to happen next turn.
I must consider.
It's cute.
Wow.
On the sliding scale of cute plays, This one approaches adorable video of kitten playing with ball on Twitter. That's how cute this play is.
It's just insane that you would show, you know, the average Hearthstone player that play and they're like, what are you doing? No, do you know what I mean? They would be like, this is ridiculous. You just put 5 damage into a 1-1. Like, no, it's weird that this is actually the right play. Or a strong play, at least. OmegaZero still has a whole lot of nothing, though, in his hand. Not without that Anduin to activate it. Here comes Raza. There's the shake of the head from OmegaZero straight away. He's like, oh, I have maybe one more turn to do something. That something has to be Anduin to have any chance of living through the rest of this game.
It's such a silly matchup in places. Like, he's Shadow Deathing his own Raza because it enables him to guaranteed cast a card. Shadow Death is a card that won't always have a target, and it doesn't turn that card into damage unless you have a target to aim it at. Conversely, if you leave a 5/5 on the board, your opponent can use Shadow Death if they get, you know, if OmegaZero was able to get it down this turn. But it's just a strange matchup that breaks all conventional rules of Hearthstone, where you do very, very wacky things. The closest comparison I can come up with is like 2015 Freeze Mage Mirrors, where you just be like blizzarding an empty board for no reason, like that kind of nonsense. Pinging yourself in the face to play around damage ranges so you wouldn't get Ice Block popped at 1. Just silly stuff that makes no sense to a casual onlooker, but actually is the mark of a very, very accomplished player. Yeah, and the plays is so strange. Sometimes I do stop for a second and be like, is that too strange? You know, because there is I'm pretty sure there's a point where you can take it too far, right? You can be too cute with plays, and it doesn't really get you there. It actually makes things a little bit worse. I doubt we're going to see that happen too often here, though. All right, Oracle goes again, trying against Hope, and is that literally card number 30? Is Anduin for OmegaZero. Ouch. That's all I've got for that one. Also, because that's exactly the last card, Neirea can set up his turn as well as he can possibly manage, right? Because he knows Anduin's in hand. He knows everything he's not seen is in hand. That's the whole deck gone. So he knows exactly what OmegaZero can and cannot do next turn. And you see already, hey, you've drawn Anduin. Enjoy these non-5 attack minions to kill. Yeah, the fact that OmegaZero had to push himself deeper into fatigue that turn just to guarantee finding the Anduin is crucial as well, because that just lowers the total amount of damage that Neirea needs to bring home before OmegaZero can do the same as well.
Yeah, and Scream's not going to help to a certain extent.
Spirit Lash is available for OmegaZero still. He can engineer a position where that's relevant, but I imagine Neirea is smart enough to have accounted for that and continue to play around it, make sure it's not enough healing to change the equation.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's also just not a world. OmegaZero's obviously taking his time thinking about his follow-up, but there isn't a world that you cannot play Anduin here. If you don't play Anduin here, then it's just one turn later, one more fatigue later, as you mentioned, and you just took a turns full of damage from Neirea. It's just where the follow-up damage is going. This may speak volumes already. He's sitting quick though. Okay.
Just about hits end turn, and Neirea is not far away if he doesn't have lethal already in this position, because he has Hero Power Velen, Hero Power Mind Blast, Hero Power Circle, Hero Power Silence, Hero Power, which I believe just about gets him over the line, maybe with the fatigue tick as well.
Yeah, I think it does.
Sit back and enjoy.
Priest of the Feast going to make this longer than it needs to be. As we sit and we're like, oh, Priest, we're already full health, just stop it. It's like, no, this is my ability, I want to show it off at every opportunity. That isn't enough. Boom! But it is now, with the fatigue.
Raven, how does fatigue work?
No, I know. Neirea takes the game. Raza, Anduin being the last card in hand for OmegaZero caused a huge amount of problems there. Was never going to be enough, especially when Neirea just got there that little bit quicker. Very, very long Priest Mirror there. Guys, we've got plenty more games to go.
Yeah, but I mean, I really enjoy watching those Priest Mirrors. A lot of people criticize them and say it just comes down to 5 and 8, but those matchups where it's very balanced are very, very even.
Yeah, plenty more games to come of this series. Don't go anywhere. We've got Purple and Orange watching, and you should be too.
I made in the early stages of that game, which is these players understand that burning cards from your opponent isn't necessarily a good thing in this matchup, and more important is to draw cards yourself. You can see OmegaZero sat right now with 9 cards in hand. So Neirea, this is the turn where he Potions of Madnesses away this Cleric, starts to draw a bunch of cards himself, cycling through his deck. Now, without that Potion of Madness, he could have done the exact same thing, but the draw would have been on OmegaZero's side. I'm sure a lot of players on ladder would have made that play trying to burn away the Anduin or whatever else from the opposing Priest player, thinking that is key to victory. But Neirea understood is much more important. He focuses on his own game plan, gets the job done himself.
Yeah, he wanted to get there first, and he did end up winning that race. Unfortunate for OmegaZero that Anduin was actually the 30th card, literally at the bottom of the deck. But got to wipe that out of his mind now and get on with this next game. Neirea versus OmegaZero, 1-0. Neirea is going to be an aggro druid mirror. I wonder if they've just been like, should we just play the mirrors out and see what happens?
Yeah, actually, this one series in the Hearthstone World Championship is being played in strike format, which, as we know...
Oh god, Radu's just jumped up with joy at that moment.
We are, in fact, playing Conquest. It's just a happy coincidence that we are seeing a bunch of mirror matches here. The lineups aren't even that similar. This shouldn't even really be happening, but yeah.
Imagine someone tuning in just as you said that. They'd be like, what?
What is right?
They'd be like, why did they just play a different format? Just one match? This makes no sense.
Mark of Yasharaj is a massive blowout already in this mirror. This is going to be a very, very different game, despite also being a mirror match from what we saw in game 1, because this is all about early board swings, early value trades, early tempo spikes. Whereas the preceding game was just a race to draw your deck while your opponent was trying to do the same thing. And Neirea landing the Mark of Yasharaj on Diamol right off the bat is just so hard to contest a body that size, and you have just this fantastic trading tool for the rest of the game.
It really is, and when you could say, oh, well, if you buff up some minions, you can trade into it. It's like, yeah, but those minions probably die as well then. So you're using your buffs to trade, whereas, you know, your AoE buffs, for example, whereas Neirea just used Mark of Yasharaj in such a dominant position from there. There's a few options now, though. The Flame Elemental and the Mark of the Lotus can just go for the Druid of the Swamp with a big taunt in the way, and then build on the buffs for next turn. Looks like that might be the option, and I like it. In this matchup, the high health taunts are actually a very serious problem that are normally left to the corridor creepers to deal with, right? It's normally like, oh, my creeper can kill this taunt. But, you know, if it's delayed coming out, then it's going to be a problem.
This mirror match is strangely intricate. It's very, very hard to gain the right to go face in this matchup. Like, going face is a right, not a privilege. You have to earn that right by gaining board dominance first to such a position that you can't be punished by going face. The weird caveat to that in this matchup is that you always want to be able to have an answer to living mana. Quite often in this mirror match, your only answer to living mana is just to start hitting them in the face. So you kind of want to have established that right to go face before you get to turn 5 and your opponent can living mana.
On turn 4, Galactic Crawler you. It's a very, very good draw from Neirea.
Is Totem Golem kill your 4/4 a good turn, thinking?
Well, when you can play something else as well.
Oh, is that what makes it good?
Yeah, that's the thing that pushed it over the line for me.
Gotcha.
A lot of small decisions, but just looking at the hands, yes, the board state, especially with this crab, is huge, but then, like, living mana on top of that is just, you don't fight back, right? Like you said, your only option is to go face with what? Right. For OmegaZero at this point in the game.
And that's what makes turns 1 through 3 so important. You know, living mana is by far the most powerful card in the deck. It just is. It does freakish things that other cards can't do. But you need to establish your baseline before you get to that point. Neirea has been able to do that off the back of the Diabol Mark of Yasharaj.
I actually really like going for the hero power here as well and just saying, no, there's going to be no messing about on your end. You have to work with the 4 mana you have to put something in my way and try and slow me down. And on top of that, when you just get to living mana first, it's just even better as well. Creeper corridor creeper.
I wonder.
Team creeper.
Creeper gang, creeper gang, creeper gang.
Where's Jay? We should get a live rendition of that from Dr. J while he's here. There's not many options, to be honest, though, is there, for Omega?
More importantly, do you remember the lyrics to Creeper Gang by Dr. J?
Something about 4 again.
I kept mine in the mulligan. Killer Seth Shadow Step on 2 again. Hitting harder than a Cobalt Scalebane.
I'm sure it said 4 in it.
Maybe.
So you don't remember the lyrics, I think is what we found out here.
Oh, mine was better.
Neirea taking on a Hearthstone player stance. And to block out anything else, his vision, and just stare at the ball. Is there a large punish for living mana, or is the punish only the inability to play your other cards next turn?
Yes, correct. That is the punish in and of itself. You're in a dominant board position by using your other cards here, which means if you want to take that line, you can do that first and then reserve living mana as your refill up. But, you know, as mentioned, like, punish is a word that's used very loosely sometimes in Hearthstone terms. And, you know, when you fill your board with 2/2s, it's not particularly a punish to be able to buff. And I'm sure right now, Twitch chat is freaking out about why there are only 4 2/2 treants on the board. Yes, but the mechanics of living mana means that only consumed 4 of his mana and not 5, meaning he is free to play any of his 2 mana cards or hero power on the next turn, which he would not have been had he summoned all 5. That is a deliberate play from Neirea.
And a strong play, as I said. You know, the problem was the inability to play the cards in hand, and now he doesn't have that problem as much. He can play at least one of them, and that buff being absolutely huge here. And this is where the disrespect for the creeper comes down now, because what's it going to do? It doesn't have taunt. Like, trade it, you know, trade your 6/2 into my 3/3. Nice one, you know. And there's plenty of follow-up after this. Neirea can drop a taunt in the way, and even make it poisonous to be immune to any other big taunts, and OmegaZero could drop out. Or he could just get him in the face.
Sure could, Raven. OmegaZero just does not have the tools to contest this.
It's 12 damage so far from hand from Neirea. If he really wanted as well, he could do a kind of like cute-ish play with the patches and then, you know, get a damage and then trade with play the crab. He's going to delay it a little bit. I'm just going to get everything else out on the board first. There's no rush. He did go for the poison on the Druid this one.
There you
little,
go.
too late.
How do you beat living mana? You make your opponent dead if they play it.
Working out exactly where he wants to put this damage, but
Thinking about that, was it a mistake for Neirea to have traded with the other minion on that turn instead of sending 3 more damage to face? Because now he actually does not have a lethal setup through living mana. I believe that trade would have always happened the other way around. Maybe, I mean, he was probably focused on wanting to make sure his Poison Spider got full value trading into something and did not want that other small
value.
Yeah, that does matter, right? Setting up lethal, I've said it the whole game, like the one card that you can very rarely come back against is living mana, and the best way to do that is just make your opponent dead if they play it, which means hit them in the face.
Yeah, and if the more value trades, fine, you end up with a bigger minion left.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know, opposite to the trade you would have done.
Right.
Huh, yeah. I think there was only really gain from Neirea going face there. Should take a look at that at some point. Rewind. Neirea does have 29 health. He is still very far ahead, but he hasn't sealed the deal quite yet. We just see the raw aggression coming out.
Crucially now, he gets OmegaZero down to 2, and by trading hero powers for the rest of the game, OmegaZero and Neirea will both remain at this deficit where OmegaZero is just at 2, which means any Savage Raw draw, even if Neirea has no board remaining behind it, will end the game.
And it makes this turn specifically awkward, right? Because he has to hero power this turn, which means whatever he draws is kind of pointless because he's on such limited mana.
Does he have to hero power this turn? 2 and 3 are the same thing, are they not, if the board is flipped?
Sure. That's a really good point. I'll give you that one. You got me. I just feel like if he doesn't, he's always a turn behind. But then again, you could say Neirea is going to hero power every turn anyway.
Right. Yeah, as long as
there's
OmegaZero
nothing big enough to draw,
OmegaZero
right?
just has to hero power every turn after this one.
Sure.
He's going to have more mana available to him because he's about to trade off a bunch of his mana tree. So this is the turn where you do not hero power. You have one free turn when you're allowed to do that.
I'll take the Soul Lecture on that one. It's a big tree.
I just saw the spell. I just saw the spell come out. They don't play many. They don't play many that aren't pink or green.
There's the concede. Neirea head in hands for a second there. That was within grasping distance, and that could have been 2-0 for Neirea. Extremely close, but OmegaZero clutches it. Somehow!
Well, I don't want to call it because I honestly wasn't like laser focused in on the game state at the time, but I feel like if Neirea went face with that extra 3 damage, he had a lethal setup, and if that is the case, that's not OmegaZero clutching it, that's Neirea throwing it away.
Yeah. We'll have to take a closer look at that one a little bit later on, but for now, let's take a closer look at OmegaZero.
Well met.
My name is OmegaZero, and I'm from China. My favorite sport is esports. The best thing about playing in the Hearthstone Championship Tour is that I get to play with the best players in the world. I'll try to win this year for sure, but I just want to have fun while I'm playing, because Hearthstone brings me so much joy.
My favorite sport is esports too. I can't argue with that from OmegaZero.
You definitely could have a long and hard argument about the validity of esports as a sport, whether it matters, whether we should care, whether we should be chasing this kind of mainstream adulation of calling it sports, or whether we should just be our own thing as competitive video games. But that's another story for another day, Raven. Today is about Hearthstone, a beautiful game, esport or not.
Well, Hearthstone. I think. Someone will tell me on Twitter, I'm sure. But this series is 1-1. Just to remind you, this is an elimination match. The loser is out. Always heartbreaking to see. Let's see who ends up being OmegaZero on the Paladin now. Neirea on the Aggro Druid again. The Patches draw is there, the Captain's there, and the Crab is there. So all the happy pirate family are together in the opening hand.
The Crab's adopted though, right?
It's that awkward cousin.
Right.
You know, you don't really want to invite them around to the house. They'll eat everything, including the other people.
You were just saying earlier you were a cannibal.
It would.
Raven tried to say he was a carnivore and said he was a cannibal.
Look, sometimes I say wrong things. Okay, I'm human, so I'm like you with your cold, dead heart.
I love you, Raven.
We talked about what goes on backstage. I thought that was off limits.
They literally had cameras back there this time.
I actually do look forward to that, guys. They've actually recorded us in the background, which is scary. But
in the meantime,
looking forward to this game.
Right, I am actually very interested
in
in this play that happened on this turn because Mark of Yasharaj was available to make a huge Raven. He could have done that with the coin as well, but just coin hero power was the only board clear that was available. And I believe I talked in the last series that we cast that clearing boards step by step against Paladin is so important. It's why Rogue does very well in this matchup, because they can pick apart the early synergies with Backstab, SO7 Agent, Charger 2-2 patches with South Sea Captain, all that kind of stuff. So Neirea, they're very much deviated from the normal aggro druid game plan. How often do you see aggro druid coin a hero power in the early game? Almost never, but it's just a recognition of the situation and the matchup that he's in.
Yeah, nice response here to the Stonehill, as the Stonehill just as nice a draw from Omega, otherwise it would have been hero power pass. But Neirea does get the Raven through, and OmegaZero, to your point, does have a couple of the recovery tools, of the very few recovery tools that are in Paladin at the moment. The call to arms there, just suddenly generating a board out of nothingness, almost a mini living mana, if you will. And then he has the Finger, which in this matchup, you can almost always kill something with Finger in any given turn.
Not a fan of Galactic Crawler in Murloc Paladin, by the way, for very much this kind of reason, right here. It's just a target you can hit with Call to Arms. But yeah, it's fine. It's a 2-mana 2/3, but you're kind of pulling it out of his deck, and that's not its job. You play it for the battle cry. That's why it's in there most of the time.
Did you swap it for Millhouse Menace? Call to Arms into a 4/4 is pretty good.
Sure. Just play Millhouse.
Put Law Walker Cho in there as well.
Millhouse and 2 Dirty Rats in every deck if you're going by that.
That was one of the first ideas I heard when we saw Call to Arms.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I can't remember who said it. I want to say Jambray. It's just something you do.
Yeah, it does sound like something Jambray would. Again, Neirea aggressively fighting for this ball control. This time he leaves a 2/3 around. It's not a Murloc. It's not the biggest deal in the world.
That was a lot of damage too.
Yeah, the only thing that can really land on it and quote, punish you is Blessing of Kings, but it was a lot of damage to give up.
This could be a fair factor here if Finch does come down, or even any of the bulky minions, so to speak, because OmegaZero is actually running 2 Spike Witch lead, and that's almost game ending to a large extent, especially on a minion that's already big. You're not Spike Witch leading out a 1/1, you're Paladin hero power. It's going to be very, very scary. Obviously, we can see he doesn't have it in hand,
right?
But Neirea needs to think he does, if he wants to win this game.
Yeah, no Spellbreaker in Neirea's list either, and this has actually been something that I've discussed with you guys and a lot of the players a lot, is the lack of Spellbreakers in people's list, even those who are potentially keeping up Warlock and banning Priest instead. And it's because they generally believe that, those matchups against Warlock are decided by early board presence more so than they are silencing a Void Lord or whatever it will be.
Smoke them down.
But suddenly, if you come into a meta game where you're expecting to face Warlock and Murloc Paladin with Spike Ridge Steeds, then suddenly Spellbreaker becomes a very attractive choice. So I don't think Murloc Paladin was anticipated to be a big chunk of the field by these players who aren't teching in Spellbreaker.
It's something all the players talked about when you talk tournament prep. Can you even consider someone might bring a deck you're going to be weak to?
Right.
The play is to bring what you deem a strong lineup and hope you dodge the person who has brought this weird thing that might just mess you up. And we see that this could be unfortunate for Neirea if he goes into double Spike Ridge, for example. You'll just lose.
We actually heard that a fair bit in our player interviews where they said, yeah, I didn't want to bring, a very heavy control lineup and then just get blown out by some weirdo that bought 4 quest decks for some reason, and I just can't,
happen, right?
I just can't win then. So yeah, I mean, we are seeing a lot of safe lineups in that tournament. If you've watched a good chunk of both days so far, you've been seeing a lot of the same decks coming out over and over. And that just speaks to the stakes of the tournament. The risk is just so hard to convince yourself into when there is this much on the line.
It really is, and this is a nice setup for Tarim as well next turn.
Yeah.
Often you don't want to Tarim against Druid. It doesn't feel great as a solo minion, but when you're winning the board against aggro Druid, yes, you'll take friendly trades all day.
Yeah, if you're wondering why we're a bit distracted and just talking about general things we find interesting in the tournament, well, the Murloc Paladin played Call to Arms into Finger, and he's miles ahead. There's not a great deal to be talking about right now.
What you got to think about though is if OmegaZero only had one of those two, Call to Arms or Finger, this would look very different because Neirea would be way further ahead earlier on.
Now there is the magic card. Living Mana can always make some interesting things happen. So now Neirea does have an out. He has a light at the end of the tunnel. He has to try and work out how he engineers that Living Mana into a win from this position.
Use the hero power, the 4-1 there. Just go off the tie caller, doesn't want it to get any bigger, but is happy at just taking the 4. Corridor creep will come down. This is just going to be an overall setup to say, well, even if you clear all of this, I have living mana. But look at that now.
Still just a finger on the board. What happened?
Didn't die?
Okay. All right, good talk. Slightly
And
confused.
this is what's so nuts about open deck lists. Omega doesn't even have to consider this. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no minion, do I put it on? Or whatever. It's like, you just put it on the strongest minion because you're not bothered about silencing. Where normally, you would place it on a different minion because then it's one silence to a Finge is still okay and gets the job done.
Right.
Now it's just like, nah, I'm just going to make a gigantic Finge. Neirea's like, just going to double check that Taunt is active. Can't hear a power down anything else for a trade.
$17 in play right now, plus 3 more for War Leader number 2. Sorry, 6 more for War Leader number 2.
Yeah, I was like, what?
And that was the last moment.
Probably should have called that one.
Not sure if OmegaZero called that one, whether
Yeah,
he needed to trade in that position if he was not pulling any Murlocs.
Yeah.
It does mitigate the effect of buffs, I guess, but there's not Savage Raw mana available, which is the only thing that really makes any great difference.
I can see.
Yep.
Wow. Very impressive game there from OmegaZero, and I would say we've not seen anything too amazing from Paladin this tournament. Obviously, we saw yesterday Holly get 0-3 in some very rough games, but that's what the Paladin wants to do, right? Just grab the board at any given point, call to arms in this game, and then stick it. Finja, Spike Witch Steed, had the Tarim in case. Really strong game there for Omega as he takes the lead.
Yeah, and very different list than we've seen before as well. A lot slower, a lot more late game. The Spike Ridge Steeds and the like all packed in there. Didn't look great first time around for OmegaZero. A lot better the second.
Yeah, plenty more games of this series coming right up. We'll be back soon.
Yeah, it's going to be a Europe versus Europe encounter as well, which is important because we've got another European representative who is on the ropes here against OmegaZero.
Yeah, OmegaZero just went up 2-1 versus Neirea in a game we're going to take a look back on throughout this series and see where the turning point was. But the series is by no means over yet. OmegaZero back on the Priest. The last deck he has to take a win with to take this match. Neirea is going to be on the Rogue for this one. There is Patches, but I imagine he's going to be going away pretty soon.
Corridor Creeper, on the other hand. We like that guy.
It's a pretty good card. Probably going to stay along with Firefly. They're like good friends. They help each other out. Really taking his time over the mulligan. What do you think he's considering? The Firefly or
It's
the
the it's the Firefly.
right?
Yeah, Corridor Creeper definitely stays. Patches obviously goes away. Firefly is just a question of like, is this card aggressive enough for me to actually be worth keeping it just to have something to play on turn 1? Do I ever want to throw it away to look for cards that do more damage more quickly, like Keleseth, for example, South Sea Captain, picking up those kind of options to really put the pressure on Priest?
Well, there we go, a second Firefly as well. This is really going to stack up here. Doesn't look like a lot of pressure, but just the minions are kind of awkward for OmegaZero to deal with outside of a coin on turn 3 into Horror, or in turn 4 natural Horror. It's a little bit rough. Neirea at that point, we actually just put a lot of damage into it. And made that creeper a lot cheaper.
Captain does come down though and amplifies the power of this board state significantly, but OmegaZero sat on so many removal options already. Pint-Size Horror is available, Pyromancer Coin and cheap spells are available, Kazakus is there to pick up another AoE potentially down the line. He can sweep a lot of boards just with the tools that he has already.
Yeah, I think Neirea, if the board was going to be cleared, would probably want one of the minion options. Like, say, the Thanos into Spirit Lash for most of the board, or mainly the Pyro, mainly because if you lose one more minion as well as this board, the Creeper becomes free and you can trade it with the, you can combo it, sorry, with the Minstrel.
Sure.
was wondering whether Neirea was ever even considering just a Shadow Step on the Firefly. Like having an extra, well, a 0 mana 1/2 to create another 1 mana 1/2. These are all small combo activators, and you can guarantee the Minstrel next turn. But hey, gonna draw Saronite Chain Gang, why not?
Is a pretty reasonable option on turn 4. OmegaZero for a kind of interesting play here. He just played out a couple of minions. Cleric for no value here. Loot Hoarder, obviously its value just comes in cycling itself anyway. But the Cleric's job is just to soften up 1 or 2 of these minions for that potential Pyromancer clear that could be coming down. And I think Neirea kind of smells that and realizes that he needs to get kind of a thick minion or in play to play around these small impact removals that Omega might be setting up for. Unfortunately for him, Omega had both options covered. He has the Alpha and the Omega in hand. A pint-sized Shadow Word Horror will take care of everything.
That's pretty huge actually, because like you said, Neirea was hedging his bets with the Corridor Creeper, and getting it blown out like that is a huge problem. OmegaZero still has plenty of juice in the tank, as is Kazakis. Is going to drop now. Going to go for a potion again. It'll probably be a defensive potion. Then there's Anduin, then there's Doomsayer, then there's Psychic Scream, and then there's Sol going ho ho all the time.
Job's done. He just nails 4 damage to all.
Easy.
There is so much AoE in OmegaZero's top 11 this game. It's kind of absurd.
Just as much as Anduin can be your bottom card.
Yep.
You can draw a lot of AoE at the start of a game.
Right.
It's just the way.
And it's kind of the nature, the price of admission for a Highlander deck is that your deck does so many different things by nature, because there's so many different individual cards that you have to put in there to make a full deck, that sometimes if you draw the right part of your deck, you're unbeatable. If you draw the wrong part of your deck, it can be tough to win.
And we've seen that in this series alone. Never mind the thousands of games across an archetype. This has pretty much been the story of OmegaZero so far. What was the other option on the potion, sorry? I know it was the damage, did you see it?
I think I didn't actually see it, but I believe from the options that were offered, he would have taken 7 armor. So I suspect that it's 4 damage 7.
It's a pretty solid card versus an aggressive deck. Still, the Minstrel coming down is given Neirea plenty of gas in the tank in terms of hand size. Allows him to just keep going. I think Minstrel was such a crazy addition to Tempo Rogue.
Yeah,
because they can just keep going and keep going and keep going again. There you go, the bonus points for you, Sol. It was the 7 armor. And now you feel like with the way OmegaZero's hand is, it's almost just using the right key for the right lock every given turn now.
I mean, there's still a ton of value to come back from Neirea. I mean, value is probably the wrong word, but there's a ton of stats that can represent pressure, more importantly. But OmegaZero still has the nuke of Shadow Reaper Anduin that can line up into a lot of these threats. Either Cobalt Scalebane or Bone Mare is likely to be completely neutralized by a Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Psychic Screen probably not worth it this turn, I would say. We want something a bit heavier. There is.
I would agree. It's Pyro time, I believe.
Yeah, there's a good amount of damage on the board, but you have Pyro, Silence, Powered Shield, Doomsayer as well. Like, that probably does just enough defense, because at this point, all OmegaZero is doing is saying, how much damage am I taking this turn? Can I take that much damage and be relatively safe? If so, then I'll do it. I always have Scream for the next turn, because the board is only going to either stay the same or get bigger from the Rogue, right?
Right.
Now there's the Raza as well. Pieces of the puzzle. Looking into place here for OmegaZero.
Again, little twists from OmegaZero. We've talked about a lot of them. Doomsayer, not a card that you see a great deal anymore in this deck. It's become much more of a pure combo deck as time has gone on, and it's cards like this have been replaced for more cycle. Whereas OmegaZero is just playing more solid bodies, more answers, and because of his then slight deficit in card draw cards, he plays Cold Light Oracle, which replaces multiple card draw effects in one go because of the double card draw effect. Which it's a pretty smart way of looking at the deck, honestly, if you think about it. I don't know whether I like it or not, but the logic makes sense.
Or as Admirable would say,
it makes sense if you don't think about it. Yeah.
It would have been a reasonable halfway play here with Deckhand and Bone Mare, but the lack of Dagger equipped really alters that play. in terms of getting anything strong down. As we see Neirea going for the deckhand, going for the dagger. Obviously now can't play the Bowmare, so probably going to have a look at that scale bit.
He needed to take care of both the Pyromancer and the Doomsayer on that turn, because just leaving Pyro off is very scary with all your minions hanging around on 2 health, but the double buff of the Scalebane means that Shadow Reaper Anduin is free to challenge this, and now, with the current context of Neirea's hand, from his side, he thinks, this is bad for me, of course, but it's not the end of the world, because I'm landing Bone Mare post-Anduin. Little does he know, there's still another Psychic Scream that he has to contend with.
Pretty swift goodbye to that board, I imagine. And also, he probably thinking, you know, still no Raza. Every ping takes time.
Oh no, we have that too.
Yeah. Like, there's like, no, we have that in stock. Don't worry.
We draw those.
I don't think Master Spell really changes much here. It reduces, like, takes 4 power off the board, so you can get Raza down. But I would rather just remove all of the power from the board this turn, I think. Especially because looking at what's been played by Neirea this game so far, there aren't many power plays left, right? Like, Leroy doesn't count. Leroy's kind of like a finisher or, you know, this kind of combo piece, but there aren't really many just solid power players. And now OmegaZero sees a completely different line to one I mentioned. Is in fact going to start utilizing these spells along with the Raza to be able to get a lot of power removed. And this is just way better than Psychic Scream, I think.
I think it's debatable, to be perfectly honest, because this is a lot of damage, a lot of cards that you are spending that translate to 2 damage each that's not hitting the rogue in the face.
That's true. I do think with Master Spell and Thanos' draw, a Psychic Scream in case anything nutty happens, and just getting Raza down quickly is such high priority.
I'm definitely not disagreeing with the play, but I think you could definitely have a debate. It's just how you see the rest of the game panning out. Like, is your plan to exhaust them of stuff until they just have no more pressure on you anymore, or is it just end the game by hitting face with Raza hero powers? You know, it's just a different way of looking at ending the game.
I think at this point as well, Neirea being on such a low card count in hand and already having 1 Minstrel played, OmegaZero's probably thinking, okay, he's not going to be able to refill his hand, right? So I can probably just kill everything now, especially with the Priest of the Feast draw just saying, just going to effectively close out the game here, because I don't think Neirea will be able to put forward enough damage when there's a Psychic Scream for emergencies, and even just Mind Blast, you know? Deal 5, you get 2 hero powers from that with the first one, and you heal unless the Priest of the Feast is dealt with. Which is in fact going to happen. But the spell's fine. Now Neirea is going to be living off the top of his deck at this point, whereas OmegaZero has plenty of stuff to do, even though Dragonfire, I mean...
It's not even really Dragonfire time, though. He'd be more looking for just cards that deal damage, end the game, or just small spot removals. You know, playable cards in every instance.
It's one of those things, at this point for Omega, he could have gone face with Raza, just Dragonfire, keep the hero powers up, play the Acolyte pass. Or we can do this, it honestly isn't going to make too much difference in the way that the, at least short term of this game plays out.
Definitely being very, very passive here. You can see OmegaZero is committed to that idea of just exhausting resources from Neirea. That might be compounded by a read on this remaining card being Bone Mare number 2, for example. The fact that it's, you know, it's been an expensive or situational card that has not been played up until this point.
And as well, you don't need to do anything flashy to win this game, right? You just don't need to, so there's no point, especially in, you know, what could be the winning game for OmegaZero in this elimination matchup. Neirea is just going to go for it. He kind of has to at the moment. His hand doesn't tell him to do anything else. Shadow Word Death is only going to compound the issues that Neirea has, and this could be the end. Member of G2. Coldlight Oracle, I imagine, is a hard pass at this point. There cannot be enough upside as OmegaZero of drawing your own cards first. You could say you could just kill him, but he gives Neirea cards that you don't want to give him. Come on. You put in your face.
Seven cards left in deck, and one of them is Profit Valor. That's a lot of upside.
0 cards in your opponent's hand, and 0 of them are nothing.
You probably don't play Coldlight.
That lineup probably don't.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be mad at it. I think you win either way.
I don't know what's wrong with you. This event must just make you really happy in general, because a lot of these times you've been like, yeah, it wouldn't be too bad, or I wouldn't be too angry. Normally you're always angry.
Fair.
Doing it. Now look at the plays given Neirea. Van Cleef into Bone Mare. It's the perfect turn 10.
It just doesn't matter. I mean, like, this is the argument for the Cold Light Oracle, though, right? Like, you get yourself guaranteed lethal, perhaps a turn quicker by playing the Cold Light Oracle. It doesn't matter what play you give your opponent, because you have Psychic Scream, which is just the ultimate you're not allowed to have fun card.
I guess once you remove Leroy from that equation,
Right,
because
exactly.
Leroy Shadow Step Deckhand, for example,
right,
you can
right.
actually just die.
Yeah.
But if Leroy is just removed from the equation, then yes, there is pretty much nothing that has too much of an immediate impact on you. By you, I mean OmegaZero. That's the concede, or that's the lethal anyway. Whichever player did that first, it doesn't matter. OmegaZero is going to take the win over Neirea. And Neirea is very sadly eliminated from the tournament.
Yeah, and well played from OmegaZero. Honestly, I've had some questions about his lineup in general, as well as some of his card choices and individual decks, but I think it might have been Neirea looking back on one or two mistakes during that series that caught him.
Yeah, it was definitely back and forth, but there were some really big just swing moments there, and I think just having that Raza and activating it when OmegaZero did put him in a position of dominance for the rest of that game. You can have a look at the group now, Group D. Obviously Surrender and Frozen at the top there. OmegaZero taking out Neirea, but still gonna fight for his life. Let's listen to OmegaZero as he has a chat with TJ on stage.
Thanks very much, guys. That's right. I'm joined by OmegaZero and our translator Karsten on stage. And the first question is, many people here may not know it, but you probably have more experience on a big stage than anybody else in the entire field. Do you still feel pressure at all, or is it, just sort of business as usual for you?
其实很多人可能不知道，你在大舞台上打比赛，可能比这些选手都要打的次数要多。所以说你现在还会在台上觉得有紧张或者压力吗？
可能一开始会有一点吧，或者中途会有一点，但是我觉得这种紧张对我来说只是很短暂的。
There's definitely some nerve at the very beginning, but that's pretty short-lived. So once I get in a groove, I'm fine.
And you've had a chance to play on both big stages in China and internationally. Is there any difference in either the players' play or how it feels to you from playing domestically as opposed to internationally?
你觉得在国际舞台上打比赛和在中国打比赛有什么区别吗？包括在你的发挥方面？
我觉得区别不是很大吧，主要就是看对手，就有一些不一样，其他我觉得区别不是很大。
I think in terms of playing the game, it was pretty much the same, but the players are going to be different, so I just have to adjust that.
And final question, now with this win, do you feel confident that you'll be able to make it out of the groups and into the quarterfinals?
然后拿下这场胜利以后，你觉得有机会能打出自己小组吗？
Yes.
Awesome. A little bit of English. Cool. All right, another big round of applause for OmegaZero. We'll be seeing him later on in the weekend. Let's go ahead and send it back over to the commentator's desk with Raven.